Welcome back. While the Democratic presidential candidates are preparing to take the debate stage tonight, they're being overshadowed today, at least, by a national interview with Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. President Trump's pursuit of political dirt about the Bidens from Ukraine is, of course, what triggered the ongoing impeachment inquiry, and Hunter has become a target personally of President Trump. In the interview, Hunter Biden defended his overseas work, but also said that his involvement in the board of a Ukrainian gas company was, in retrospect, quote, poor judgment. And Biden acknowledged that he did benefit from his father's name and position.
I think that it is impossible for me to be on any of the boards that I just mentioned without saying that I'm the son of the Vice President of the United States.
If your last name wasn't Biden, do you think you would have been asked to be on the board of Burisma?
I don't know. Probably not. I don't think that there's a lot of things that would have happened in my life that if my last name wasn't Biden.
Kate Bedingfield is the Deputy Campaign Manager and Communications Director for the Joe Biden campaign. Kate, nice to see you. Happy debate day.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
Let me start with your campaign seemed pretty emphatic that Hunter Biden shouldn't have to go out there, that you guys didn't need to be answering questions about Hunter Biden. He had nothing to answer for, that the president was playing a conspiracy game, and that you shouldn't give it credibility. That was essentially what I felt like you guys were saying for the last month. What changed?
No, that's exactly right. This is Donald Trump's game. Look, Hunter Biden has been attacked viciously and personally by Donald Trump for the past 3 weeks. He sat down this morning and answered every question that was thrown at him, which frankly is a lot more than you can say for Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and their ilk, who are stonewalling and refusing to answer questions in their own impeachment inquiry, by the way. But, you know, you had Hunter sit down. He answered questions. He showed that he's not going to be bullied by the president of the United States, and neither is our campaign. Look, let's take a step back and look at why we are having this conversation at all. It is because Donald Trump does not want to face Joe Biden at the ballot box. That's what this is all about. He has committed impeachable offenses. He has sent his personal attorney to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. He has openly, from the South Lawn of the White House, called on foreign nations to step in and try to influence the election because he's afraid he will lose to Joe Biden and he doesn't want to have to face him. So, look, Democratic voters are looking for somebody who can get Donald Trump out of office. Joe Biden is that candidate. Donald Trump also, by the way, clearly believes that he's that candidate. Right. Joe Biden is the guy who can get Donald Trump out of the White House.
The other thing you guys did this weekend, Kate, is you put out, not only did Hunter Biden's lawyer put out a statement, but you guys put out, I guess, I don't know what some sort of how you would ethically, what you would ask for in conflict of interest issues and stuff like that. I guess I'm curious, why wasn't that on day one of the campaign? It does feel like you guys that Donald Trump's campaign is dictating sort of when you guys address these things. That's something that seemed like you could have addressed on day one.
No, absolutely not. Look, Joe Biden got into this race making the case against Donald Trump. And when he got in, you guys all said, oh, he's making a general election argument. Is this really the argument for the moment? He's the one who's been making the most aggressive case against Donald Trump in this field since we got into the race. He has talked about the stakes, the damage that Trump is doing, shredding our Constitution, the risk, the fact that he is an existential threat to the country. So Joe Biden has been running this campaign on his terms. Now, you're absolutely right. We put out a plan over the weekend that gives voters a sense of exactly what kind of ethical administration President Biden would run. And look, Biden helped run one of the most ethical White Houses that we've seen in modern history, 8 years in the Obama-Biden White House without a hint of scandal. So voters know what kind of leader he'll be. And, he put forward a really powerful plan that calls for a constitutional amendment to get private money out of politics entirely. He called for, a ban on political influence in the Department of Justice, something that the Trump administration seems to find
look, I get all that. I guess the question I have is,
violate.
Kate, the question I have is why on this conflict of interest thing, which frankly on the Hunter Biden situation was known then, why not throw that out there on day one? I mean, it just seemed like an obvious thing to do.
people know Joe Biden. They know who he is. They have known that he has been in office for 40 years. You know, he came into the Senate as one of the poorest members of the Senate. He left the Senate as one of the poorest members of the Senate. And you know what? He's released 21 years of his tax returns, including his time in public office and his time as a private citizen. So anybody who wants to know anything about how Joe Biden has made his money, they know that. And they knew that on day one of this race. And Donald Trump, we can't say the same thing for. He is currently sitting in the White House, lining his pockets, we don't know from where, and has refused to put his tax returns out. Joe Biden has been a leader on that, has been aggressive about that. I think there's no question that voters know who Joe Biden is and what kind of ethical leadership he'd bring to the White House.
Do you view your chief primary rival as Elizabeth Warren? And if so, what is your case of why voters should pick Joe Biden instead of Elizabeth Warren?
We're focused on running our race. I mean, we view our opponent, and I would imagine that the other Democratic campaigns would say the same thing. We view our opponent as Donald Trump. And look, the case for Joe Biden is he is the lone candidate in this race who has the experience, who has the record of progressive action, who knows how to get things done. He doesn't just talk about change. He's done it. His entire life, he's committed to making change in people's lives. That includes the Affordable Care Act. That includes the Violence Against Women Act. You know, that includes the Recovery Act, one of the single biggest government investments in clean energy in this country. So, you know, there is a lot of talk about change in this race, and he's the candidate who's actually delivered it. So I think, again, as Democrats are looking, Democratic voters desperately want Donald Trump out of office. They know that Joe Biden is the candidate to go toe-to-toe with him, and they also know that he's the candidate who can deliver real change for their lives, because that's what running for president is about. It's about making change in people's lives, and that's something that Joe Biden has delivered every day of his public career.
Kate Bedingfeld, Deputy Campaign Manager with the Biden campaign at debate night there in outside of Columbus, Ohio. Thanks very much for coming on, sharing your views. I much appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.